In 1987, a young deputy sheriff in rural Texas climbed into her patrol car and drove off into the night. She was tough, she was trusted, and she was never seen again. By morning, she had completely vanished. No goodbye, no wreck, no body, just gone. For years, her family lived in torment. Was she murdered, kidnapped, or did someone inside her own department know more than they were saying? Rumors tore the town apart. Then 6 years later, on a quiet lake, a fisherman noticed something strange poking above the water. When police pulled it out, the crowd gasped. It was her patrol car, rusted, crushed, and hiding something chilling inside. What they discovered would finally explain what really happened that night, and why it stayed hidden for so long. Stick with me, because once you hear this story, you'll never forget it. And before we dive in, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. It is the summer of 1987 in a small Texas town, the kind of place where everyone knows each other, where people wave when they drive past, and where gossip spreads faster than the wind. On the surface, it looks safe, but under the surface, people know the truth. This is a place where law enforcement holds real power. The sheriff's office is small but carries weight. Deputies in tan uniforms and polished boots patrol the roads, watch the bars, and keep an eye on the backroads where trouble sometimes hides. For most people, the badge brings comfort, but for others, it brings fear. Not everyone trusts the men who wear it. And in this environment, one deputy stands out. She is not like the others. She is a woman in a role still dominated by men. In the 1980s, this is rare, and in a town like this, it is almost unheard of. She wears the same uniform, carries the same weapon, drives the same patrol car. But every time she steps out of her vehicle, people stare a little longer. Her name is spoken with respect by many, but also with whispers by others. Some admire her courage, some doubt her strength, and some resent her for breaking into a space that was not built for her. On the job, she works harder than most. Every call she takes, every shift she runs, she has to prove herself again and again. She knows that one mistake will not just stain her reputation, it will confirm the doubts people already have about her. This pressure weighs on her, but she doesn't let it show. She walks into the sheriff's office with her head held high, her badge catching the light, her boots heavy on the old wooden floor. She is young, in her late 20s, but she carries herself like someone older. She has already seen more than most people her age should have. Car wrecks on dark highways, domestic fights in broken homes, the loneliness of night patrols, driving endless miles through silent country roads. Her family is proud of her, but they worry too. They know how hard this job is. They know the kind of enemies law enforcement can make, especially in a town where grudges last for years. Still, she pushes forward. She is determined. She loves her work. She believes in it. And that belief keeps her moving, even on the nights when exhaustion sits heavy on her shoulders. In this small Texas town where the badge is both trusted and feared, she is more than just a deputy. She is a symbol, a rare, shining figure in uniform. But in just a matter of weeks, she will not be remembered for her service. She will be remembered for something else, something that will haunt this community for years. Because in 1987, this deputy sheriff, strong, respected, and proud, will vanish without a trace. On duty, the deputy is sharp. She is focused, professional, and calm under pressure. People describe her as brave, even fearless. She steps into danger when others hesitate. She handles calls with authority that surprises those who underestimate her. But when the uniform comes off, another side of her shows. She is human, and she carries struggles that few people see. The long hours wear her down. Night shifts leave her exhausted. She pushes herself hard, sometimes too hard. Friends notice the way she rubs her eyes at the diner after late shifts, or how she stays quiet when the others joke around. Her family sees the weight more clearly. They see the toll of missed dinners, unanswered phone calls, and sleepless nights. They know she is proud of her job, but they also know it comes at a cost. At the department, there are whispers. Some deputies respect her, but others clash with her. She has argued with coworkers, sometimes over small things, sometimes over decisions that cut deeper. She tries not to take it home, but the tension lingers. She is admired, but she is also isolated. She feels the need to always be strong, never vulnerable, never weak. And that pressure is about to grow even heavier. It is a Friday night in early spring 1987. The air is cool, the roads mostly empty. Deputy Martinez is behind the wheel of her patrol car. The radio crackles with the usual calls. A noise complaint, a stray dog, a broken tail light. Nothing major, nothing unusual. She checks in with dispatch at 8:47 p.m. Her voice sounds steady, calm. Her shift runs like it always does. She stops by a gas station to check on the clerk, who waves and smiles. She drives past the diner where a few locals sip coffee. She pulls over one driver for a busted headlight, gives a warning, and sends him on his way. Every step of her routine seems ordinary. No one sees anything strange. No one hears a cry for help. Around midnight, she drives down the highway that runs past a dark stretch of farmland. She calls dispatch again, confirming her patrol route. The response comes back. Copy that. That is the last recorded transmission from her car. At 1:12 a.m., her shift should be ending. She usually heads home, parks her patrol unit in the driveway, and goes inside to rest. But that night, she doesn't check out. No one notices right away. Shifts overlap. People assume she's fine. The next few hours are silent. Her radio goes quiet. Her headlights never return. Her car vanishes into the darkness of rural Texas. When the sun comes up, there will be no trace of where she went or what happened next. Saturday morning begins like any other. The small town wakes slowly. Neighbors water lawns. The diner opens for breakfast. The sheriff's office prepares for the weekend shift. But Deputy Martinez's house is still. Her curtains are closed. Her driveway is empty. The patrol car that should be parked there is gone. Her bed is untouched. No sign she ever came home. Her closest friend, another deputy, notices first. He tries calling her house phone. No answer. He radios dispatch. Nothing. By late morning, whispers spread inside the department. "Where's Martinez?" someone asks. "She was on shift last night." Another deputy checks the logs. Her last call was routine. No distress, no warning, then silence. Colleagues drive by her home again. No car, no movement. That sinking feeling grows. By noon, her family is contacted. They say she never came home. Panic takes over. This is not like her. She is responsible, careful, and always in touch. She doesn't just disappear. The sheriff orders deputies to check highways, backroads, and rural areas. Nothing. Hours pass. Still no sign of her. By evening, the town begins to realize something is very wrong. A deputy sheriff has vanished without a trace. The first official search begins within hours of her being reported missing. At sunrise, deputies spread out across the county. They drive the highways, dirt roads, and farm trails she often patrolled. Every mile feels heavy with dread. Helicopters sweep overhead, their spotlights cutting across fields and rivers. Search teams wade through brush, creeks, and culverts. They look for tire marks, broken fences, or anything that might show where her patrol car went. Nothing. It doesn't make sense. A car cannot just vanish. Deputies argue about where to look next. Some believe she may have run off the road and crashed. Others suspect she was taken. Her family joins the effort. Her parents drive out to rural areas, scanning ditches with flashlights. Friends walk along fence lines, calling her name, but the silence is deafening. By the second day, the search grows. State troopers arrive. Volunteers come with horses and ATVs. Dozens of people comb the countryside. Still nothing. Not a piece of glass, not a skid mark, not even a dropped radio. Every hour that passes makes the mystery deeper. Reporters begin showing up at the sheriff's office, asking hard questions. How can one of your deputies just vanish? Where is her patrol car? What happened after her last radio call? The sheriff gives short answers. "We are doing everything we can." But behind closed doors, the frustration is clear. There are no leads, no evidence, no direction. By the end of the week, the search has covered hundreds of miles. Helicopters return to base. Deputies go home exhausted. Families wait by phones for news that never comes. It feels impossible. One of their own has disappeared, and it's as if she has been erased from the earth. In a town this small, word spreads fast. By the end of the first week, everyone knows Deputy Martinez is missing. Neighbors begin whispering over fences. At the diner, every booth is filled with theories. Some say she ran away. Others fear she was murdered. The local newspaper runs a front-page headline: "Deputy vanishes without a trace." Radios repeat the story every hour. The fact that it's one of their deputies makes it worse. If a trained officer can vanish, what about everyone else? People begin locking doors earlier. Parents keep kids closer. Farmers carry rifles while checking their land. A quiet town once ruled by trust now feels shadowed by fear. Something sinister is out there, and no one knows what it is. At first, people wanted to believe this was a simple accident. Maybe her car ran off the road into some hidden ditch. Maybe searchers just missed it. But as days turned into weeks, that explanation began to feel less and less likely. In the absence of answers, rumors filled the silence. Some townsfolk whispered that the deputy had been under too much pressure. She was one of the only women in the department. She worked long nights, carried stress on her shoulders, and rarely shared what was going on inside. Maybe she snapped. Maybe she left town to escape. Others were certain she had been taken. The idea of a deputy, trained, armed, and alert, being kidnapped terrified people. But in the minds of many, it explained the total lack of evidence. If someone powerful had wanted her gone, maybe they knew how to make her disappear. Then came the darker rumor that someone inside the sheriff's department knew more than they were admitting. She had argued with colleagues in the weeks before her disappearance. There were whispers of jealousy, conflict, and heated words. Could one of her own have turned against her? Families began dividing over the theories. At church, neighbors argued in hushed tones. At the grocery store, strangers whispered in line. One woman swore she had seen the deputy driving late that night, but her story clashed with another witness who insisted she was already gone. Detectives tried to follow up on these leads, but nothing solid came from them. Every interview only seemed to open new questions. Her family listened to the gossip with heavy hearts. They knew she had been under stress, yes, but they could not believe she would walk away from her job, her badge, and her parents. They were convinced she wanted to be found, and that something terrible had happened. Inside the department, tension grew. Every officer was asked where they had been that night. Every alibi was checked and rechecked. Still, suspicion lingered. Some deputies avoided talking about her, afraid of being accused. Others grew angry, defending their loyalty but secretly wondering if the rumors might be true. The media fed the fire. Headlines like "Deputy's disappearance linked to department" or "Did she know too much?" made their way into the papers. Each headline chipped away at the town's trust in its own protectors. The sheriff tried to control the damage, standing at press conferences with rehearsed lines. "We are working every lead. We have no reason to believe foul play within the department." But those words did little to stop the spread of doubt. By the end of the month, the story had shifted. It was no longer just about a missing deputy. It was about secrets, lies, and the unsettling idea that the truth might never come out. For the town, the deputy's absence was no longer just a tragedy. It was a mystery that swallowed trust, leaving only suspicion in its place. When a deputy disappears, the response is immediate. Within hours, the sheriff's office calls in detectives. This isn't just a missing person case anymore. It's the disappearance of one of their own. The mood is urgent, tense, and angry. Detectives start with her last shift. They pull the call logs. They study every radio time, every note she made during patrol. It looks like an ordinary night. She checked a few stops, responded to nothing major, then signed off as if she were heading home. Nothing unusual stands out. But the clock is ticking. The first 48 hours are critical in any disappearance, and already too much time has slipped by. They begin retracing her movements. Detectives interview people she might have passed on her route: gas stations, diners, late-night businesses. Some remember seeing her patrol car. Others say they don't recall anything at all. Each lead sends investigators down a different road, but none of them lead anywhere solid. Her radio logs become a focal point. The last call she answered was routine, something that should have been forgettable. But now it feels heavy with meaning. Was that the moment something happened? Or was it just the last normal piece of her life? Detectives question her coworkers, asking about her mental state, her routine, her habits. Some say she seemed tired. Others say she seemed fine. One deputy remembers she argued with someone the week before, but details are vague. Every answer only adds more questions. By the third day, maps cover the walls of the sheriff's office. Red pins mark places searched. Yellow notes cover names of witnesses. The picture looks busy but empty at the same time. The reality hits hard. Without evidence, they are working in the dark, and the deputy's trail has already gone cold. The next big question is simple. Where is her patrol car? For investigators, this becomes the central obsession. A missing deputy is terrifying, but a missing deputy and a missing car, that's something else entirely. A patrol car is not small. It's not easy to hide. It has a number painted on the side, lights on top, and a radio inside. If she had wrecked it, there should be signs. If she had left it somewhere, someone should have seen it. Yet it's nowhere. Detectives organize roadblocks, asking drivers if they've seen anything strange. They send planes up to search highways and rivers. Troopers check every bridge, culvert, and ditch. Nothing turns up. The car has simply vanished. The sheriff tells reporters, "Once we find the car, we'll find her." But behind closed doors, detectives admit they don't know if that's true. The missing car removes their biggest clue. Usually, a vehicle is a crime scene. It holds fingerprints, hair, fibers, maybe even blood. But without it, they have no starting point. Some investigators begin to wonder, was the car deliberately hidden? If so, whoever took it had time, knowledge, and nerve. That thought shakes the department to its core. As the search drags on, locals begin stepping forward with stories. At first, detectives are relieved. Finally, someone might have seen something. But quickly, the accounts start clashing. One man swears he saw her patrol car on the highway just after midnight. He remembers the flashing lights and says she looked calm, driving alone. Investigators take notes, hopeful. Then a woman comes forward. She insists she saw the deputy at a gas station around the same time, buying a drink. She even remembers the uniform. But the problem, the gas station clerk says he worked that night and saw no such thing. Another witness says he spotted her talking to someone in another patrol car near the county line. He couldn't make out who the other officer was, but he's certain it was her. Detectives check duty logs, but no deputies were scheduled in that area at that hour. Each story raises new possibilities and new doubts. Was she driving alone? Was she meeting someone? Or were people just misremembering? Detectives spend hours chasing these leads. They show photos. They compare timelines. But none of the stories line up. One sighting places her miles away from another at the exact same time. It becomes impossible to separate fact from rumor. The conflicting accounts leave investigators frustrated. They want to believe someone saw the truth. But in small towns, once whispers start, they spread fast. People may truly believe what they think they saw, but memories twist under pressure. By the end of the week, detectives realize something painful. The witnesses aren't helping. They're only making the mystery worse. With no solid witness to trust, investigators double down on the ground search. Search teams expand their radius. They drag rivers with chains, hoping the weight of the car might pull them down. Nothing. They sweep country roads mile by mile, checking for broken guardrails or tire marks. Every culvert and ravine is searched. Dogs are brought in, sniffing for scent trails. The animals lead handlers to ditches, barns, and brush. But each time the trail fades into nothing. Helicopters circle overhead, their spotlights cutting through the night. But from above, the land is empty. Deputies set up checkpoints at major roads, asking drivers if they saw anything unusual that night. The answers are always the same: no. Despite all the manpower, the result is the same: nothing. No car, no tracks, no wreckage, no deputy. It's as if she and her patrol car were swallowed whole by the Texas night. By the third week, the disappearance is no longer just a local story. Reporters from Dallas, Houston, and even national outlets arrive in town. Satellite vans park outside the sheriff's office. Cameras crowd the steps. Headlines scream across newspapers and TV screens. Deputy vanishes without a trace. For the department, the attention is suffocating. This isn't just about finding a missing person anymore. It's about saving their reputation. People expect answers fast, but detectives don't have any. Inside the sheriff's office, the mood turns frantic. Leadership fears the backlash. If they can't protect their own, how can they protect the public? Officers whisper about leaks to the press. Some worry about being blamed. Others start pointing fingers, questioning who last saw her and why they missed something. Every press conference feels like a trap. Reporters shout, "Did she run away? Was she murdered? Do you suspect one of your own?" The sheriff sticks to scripted lines, "We are exploring every lead. We will not rest until we bring her home." But behind closed doors, confidence is fading. Morale inside the department collapses. Some deputies work long hours, desperate to prove loyalty. Others pull back, worried their names will end up in headlines. Trust between officers weakens. And outside, the public grows restless. Town meetings fill with angry questions. Why hasn't the car been found? Why weren't rivers searched harder? What are you hiding from us? The once quiet community feels like it's boiling over. A missing deputy isn't just a tragedy anymore. It's a test of faith in the law, in leadership, and in the thin line between order and chaos. While the department struggles, her family lives in daily torment. They call the sheriff's office every morning begging for updates. The answers are always the same. "We're working on it. We're following leads." But no real progress comes. Her parents grow restless, desperate for truth. At first, they trusted the investigators. But as weeks pass, trust begins to crack. Were mistakes made? Were clues missed? Or, even worse, was something being hidden from them? Each night they stare at the phone, waiting for news that never comes. The silence eats away at them. For her family, the deputy is not just a missing case. She's their daughter, their sister, their blood. And the pain of not knowing is unbearable. The longer the deputy remained missing, the more the town itself began to change. At first, people thought it was a strange accident. But as weeks passed with no car, no body, and no trace, fear began to spread like wildfire. If a trained deputy sheriff could vanish without leaving a single clue, then what chance did anyone else have? The small routines of daily life shifted. Families who never locked their doors before now checked them twice every night. Parents stopped letting their children play outside after dark. Teenagers who once drove the back roads now refused to go near them. Stores in town began closing earlier. The diner that usually stayed open until midnight shut its doors by 9. People no longer lingered over coffee or pie. They wanted to get home before the sun went down. Church services became crowded, not because of faith alone, but because people felt safer gathered together. The missing deputy's name was spoken in every prayer. "Bring her home. Give us answers. Protect us." But outside of church walls, whispers grew darker. Some said she had been taken by someone she trusted. Others believed she stumbled onto something criminal and was silenced. The most unsettling theory came from those who thought one of her fellow deputies might be involved. The sheriff's office could feel the shift. When deputies patrolled the streets, people no longer waved. Instead, they stared with suspicion. Some even muttered insults under their breath. Trust in the badge was cracking. Newspapers and radio shows kept the fear alive. Every headline carried a sense of doom. Deputy still missing, no leads. Every broadcast repeated the same unanswered questions. Listeners filled in the blanks with their own fears. In homes across town, conversations turned grim. "If she can disappear, so can we. Don't go out after dark. Stay away from strangers." The once quiet town, built on trust and routine, now lived in a state of constant unease. Every empty road, every shadow in the woods, every knock at the door carried a question. Could it happen again? The disappearance had not just taken one deputy. It had stolen the town's sense of safety. And until answers came, that fear wasn't going away. The first week after Deputy Anna's disappearance was chaos. Officers were everywhere. Helicopters circled. Search dogs combed through woods and fields. Reporters stood outside the sheriff's office every day. But then nothing. No car. No tracks. No answers. 2 weeks later, the search effort slowed. Officers still checked tips, but the daily hunts were over. People in town noticed. The posters that had once been taped fresh on every window began to curl and fade. By week 3, it felt like the whole case had gone cold. The only thing left was silence. Anna's family tried to keep the pressure alive. They called news stations. They begged the sheriff's office for updates. But most of the time, the response was the same: "We're still investigating." The town felt different now. The streets seemed emptier. Neighbors avoided eye contact. Everyone was thinking the same thing: how can someone just vanish like this? By the end of the first month, whispers started. Some believed Anna had been targeted. Others thought maybe she had walked away from her life. Either way, hope was fading. At the sheriff's office, morale was low. Deputies who had once believed in teamwork now started second-guessing each other. Quiet conversations behind closed doors became normal. Some wondered if Anna's case would ever be solved. When the second month came and went, frustration turned into anger. Anna's parents spoke publicly for the first time. Standing in front of cameras, her mother said through tears, "We just want our daughter back. Someone knows something. Please, please tell us." It broke the town's heart. But even after that emotional plea, no one stepped forward. By month 3, the case had become part of the town's routine. People stopped expecting updates. The story still made the occasional headline, but it was no longer front-page news. Still, at night, families locked their doors earlier. They checked the back seats of their cars before driving. The silence around Anna's case wasn't just painful, it was terrifying. What if the same thing happened again? What if the person responsible was still out there? Slowly, suspicion grew. And with it came something worse: rumors that maybe Anna wasn't the person everyone thought she was. By the 4th month, the investigation had shifted. With no new leads, people in town started filling the silence with theories of their own. It began small. A neighbor mentioned Anna had seemed stressed in the weeks before she vanished. Someone else remembered she had been making more late-night drives. Soon, those simple details twisted into something bigger. Maybe she was running from someone. Maybe she had a secret boyfriend. Maybe she was living a double life. At the diner downtown, conversations grew louder. Each story seemed to make Anna look more mysterious. People asked questions like, why wasn't her car ever found? And why was she alone that night anyway? Some even whispered that Anna might not have been a victim at all, that maybe she had chosen to disappear. For her family, those rumors were devastating. Anna's brother told a reporter she loved her job, she loved this town, she would never just leave. But the whispers kept spreading. At the sheriff's office, the gossip was worse. A few deputies quietly wondered if Anna knew something she shouldn't have. Others asked if she had been keeping secrets from them too. The more people speculated, the more suspicious her absence seemed. Every piece of her past, old relationships, late work nights, missed phone calls, became fuel for theories. The town that had once prayed for Anna's safe return now questioned who she really was. And with no answers from investigators, the line between fact and rumor blurred completely. Anna wasn't just missing anymore. She was becoming a mystery people debated in whispers, a puzzle without a picture. As weeks dragged on, detectives started to dig deeper, not just into Anna's personal life, but also her work inside the sheriff's department. What they found surprised many. On the surface, Anna was respected. She was young, hardworking, and known for being dedicated. But interviews with deputies painted a different picture. One officer admitted she didn't back down. If she thought something was wrong, she called it out. At first, that sounded like a compliment. But as detectives pressed further, stories of heated arguments began to surface. Some deputies recalled tense exchanges during late-night shifts. Others mentioned that Anna had been frustrated with the way certain cases were handled. One source even claimed she'd threatened to file a formal complaint about misconduct. That raised questions. Was Anna simply a strong-willed deputy standing her ground? Or was there more going on? Detectives quietly pulled internal reports. In one, a supervisor had noted Anna's difficulty working with others. Another documented a verbal altercation between her and a senior deputy just 2 weeks before she vanished. It painted a troubling picture. The department had been struggling with morale even before Anna disappeared. Now, it seemed possible she had been at the center of some of that tension. When detectives brought these details to Anna's family, they were shocked. Her father said, Anna loved her job. She believed in doing what was right. If she argued, it's because she cared. But investigators couldn't ignore the possibility. What if her clashes at work weren't just about stress? What if they had made her a target? For the first time, suspicion shifted inward. Could someone inside the department have wanted her gone? Detectives tried to follow this angle carefully. If there was any truth to it, it could destroy the public's trust in law enforcement. Still, whispers grew louder. Local reporters got hold of fragments of the story and published headlines suggesting deputy vanished amid internal feud. Suddenly, what had once been a tragic disappearance now looked like something darker, maybe even corruption. The sheriff's office denied those claims, calling them baseless speculation. But in town, the damage was done. The idea that Anna's disappearance might be connected to her own department shook people to their core. And detectives now had to ask, were these just normal workplace arguments? Or had Anna uncovered something she was never meant to find out? Just as suspicion around the department grew, a new tip came in, one that pushed the investigation in a different direction. A local woman called the sheriff's office claiming she had seen Anna being followed in the weeks before she disappeared. According to her, a dark vehicle often trailed Anna's patrol car at night. At first, she thought it was coincidence, but after it happened 3 times, she became convinced it was deliberate. Detectives jumped on the lead. They interviewed others who knew Anna, asking if she had ever mentioned being watched. A coworker recalled Anna saying she felt eyes on her during late shifts. Another friend said Anna had complained about a car parked near her apartment too often. The pieces began to fit. Investigators started combing through traffic cameras, trying to spot the suspicious vehicle. They canvassed gas stations, stores, and diners along Anna's regular routes. The theory was simple. Maybe Anna hadn't vanished because of workplace tension. Maybe she'd been targeted by a stalker. The media caught wind quickly. Headlines now screamed, "Deputy may have been stalked before vanishing." For Anna's family, the news was both terrifying and oddly hopeful. Terrifying, because it meant someone dangerous could still be out there. Hopeful, because maybe this was finally the break the case needed. Detectives chased every possible lead. They followed up on cars that matched the description. They checked old reports of harassment in the area. They even considered whether Anna might have arrested someone who later came back to watch her. But just as quickly as the lead appeared, it began to fall apart. The traffic footage showed nothing conclusive. No car seemed to follow her consistently. Witness accounts contradicted each other. Some swore it was a black truck. Others insisted it was a blue sedan. And the woman who first reported it, when pressed for details, her story shifted. First, she said she saw the vehicle 3 times. Later, she claimed it was only once. By the end of the month, detectives admitted privately that the stalker lead had gone cold. The public didn't know what to believe anymore. Was Anna being followed? Or was it just another rumor, another piece of speculation in a case already drowning in them? For investigators, it was devastating. Every time they thought they were close to an answer, the trail disappeared. And for the community, fear only grew stronger. If Anna had been stalked, it meant a predator had been walking their streets, watching, waiting. And if that was true, what if they were still out there? By now, the town was filled with whispers. And those whispers started pointing in a dangerous direction, straight at the sheriff's office itself. At first, people thought it was crazy. Why would deputies harm one of their own? But as weeks turned to months with no answers, the idea began to feel less far-fetched. Locals noticed how the department had handled the case. Some evidence wasn't logged quickly. Some leads weren't followed with urgency. Reporters dug up old records showing low morale and past scandals in the office. Theories spread fast. Maybe someone in uniform had been involved in Anna's disappearance. Maybe leadership was burying evidence to protect their own. The sheriff went on television denying it. He said, This office is doing everything possible to bring Deputy Anna home. Any suggestion otherwise is false and harmful. But his words didn't stop the rumors. Inside the department, the tension was unbearable. Detectives felt like they were under investigation themselves. Every move was second-guessed. Every delay was twisted into proof of corruption. One deputy admitted privately, "We can't even do our jobs anymore. The public thinks we're hiding something. And some days, I wonder if maybe someone is." For Anna's coworkers, it was crushing. They wanted answers as much as anyone, but the weight of suspicion made it impossible to focus. Some officers even started to turn on each other. Trust collapsed. And for detectives leading the case, one haunting question grew louder. What if the public was right? The FBI was quietly consulted. They reviewed case files, evidence handling, and interview transcripts. Their presence only fueled the gossip. If the FBI was stepping in, people reasoned, there must be something big being covered up. Headlines grew harsher. National outlets now described the disappearance not just as a mystery, but as a potential scandal. By the end of the year, the case was no longer just about finding Anna. It had become a war over trust, reputation, and survival. The sheriff's office, once the symbol of safety, was now itself under suspicion. And with every passing day, the truth about what really happened to Anna seemed even further away. Through it all, Anna's family watched with broken hearts. At first, they had leaned on law enforcement, trusting them to bring answers. But as time dragged on, that trust began to collapse. Her parents went from hopeful to suspicious. They started to notice the same things the public did: leads that weren't followed, evidence that seemed mishandled, updates that came too slow. At one press conference, Anna's mother broke down, saying, "We don't know who to believe anymore. We just want our daughter back, but it feels like no one is telling us the truth." Her father grew more direct. He openly questioned the sheriff's leadership, saying, "If they can't be honest with us, then maybe they're hiding something." For the family, grief turned into anger. They felt betrayed. The very people sworn to protect Anna had now become the ones they doubted the most. Reporters quickly picked up their statements. The headlines were brutal. Family of missing deputy accuses sheriff's office of failure. The cracks were now public. The once united front between the family and investigators was gone. For Anna's loved ones, the hardest part wasn't just not knowing what happened. It was feeling like they could no longer trust the people trying to solve it. As the months passed, the town itself began to split apart. What started as one community searching together for answers slowly turned into a community divided by suspicion. At diners, at church gatherings, at school events, people whispered their own theories. Some were sure Anna had been murdered. They pointed to the lack of evidence, the missing car, and the rumors of conflict inside the department. To them, this wasn't an accident or a disappearance. It was a crime, covered up by someone powerful. Others pushed back. They believed she had run away. They said she had been under too much stress. Maybe she cracked under the pressure of the badge, and leaving was her only way out. These voices argued she didn't want to be found. Arguments broke out in public. Neighbors who had once trusted each other now gave cold stares. Families disagreed at the dinner table. Even within Anna's own extended relatives, there were fights about what to believe. The local paper ran both sides. One headline read, "Deputy taken by foul play." Another the next week asked, "Did deputy choose to disappear?" The conflicting stories fueled the divide. For the sheriff's office, the fracture was even worse. Every day they felt the weight of a community that no longer trusted them. When deputies pulled someone over, they could feel the doubt in people's eyes. Were these protectors or possible suspects? The wound grew deeper with every passing month. The case was no longer just about Anna. It had become about the town itself, its trust, its safety, its unity. And as long as Anna remained missing, the community remained broken. In the first few months after Anna's disappearance, the case file grew thick. Pages of reports, maps with red circles, photos of possible leads, all of it stacked high on a detective's desk. But as time moved on, that stack of papers stopped growing. The early energy, the frantic searches, the late-night strategy sessions, all of it slowly faded. Detectives who had promised to find Anna no matter what were reassigned. Some retired, some gave up. New detectives joined the department, but to them, the case was just an old file. They read it, shook their heads, and moved on to fresher cases. The town had once been flooded with search teams. Helicopters, dogs, checkpoints, now those were gone. What remained was silence. Every so often, someone would call in a tip. A person thought they saw her in another state. Someone else swore her car was buried near an abandoned quarry. Detectives checked them, but every lead fizzled out. The case file became filled with dead ends. One detective admitted privately, "This case feels cursed. No matter what we do, it's like she just vanished from the earth." Her name slipped from the headlines. The national news moved on to other stories. Even local papers only mentioned her on anniversaries. 1 year without Anna, then 2 years without answers. Her parents clipped those articles and kept them in a box, hoping one day there would be a final one, the headline that told them what really happened. But year after year, that headline never came. In the sheriff's office, Anna's badge was still displayed on the wall. New deputies asked about it, and veterans explained the story. The younger ones shook their heads in disbelief. How could a deputy just vanish and no one know why? For her family, the slow passage of time was the cruelest thing of all. In the early days, they had prayed for answers every night. Now, their prayers felt smaller, just for closure, just for something, anything to break the silence. But silence was all they got. Anna's case had moved from a living investigation to a cold file sitting in a drawer. On paper, Anna was still listed as missing. That word carried hope. It meant the case was open. It meant there was still a chance she was alive somewhere. But to the people who lived in the town, missing no longer felt real. By the 3rd year, most residents quietly accepted what they feared from the start. Anna was gone forever. They didn't say it out loud at first, but in private conversations, they spoke as if she was already dead. For her family, it was unbearable. Every time they saw the word missing on a document, it felt like a lie. A cruel reminder that they had no body, no funeral, no closure. Her father once said, "They call her missing, but we know she's gone. We just don't know where she is." The sheriff's office tried to keep the case alive. They issued reminders, sent press releases, and begged for tips. But the public no longer believed. The case began to feel cursed. For new deputies, her disappearance was a story told in hushed tones. They were warned about it, as if speaking her name too much might bring bad luck. And for the community, Anna's fate was no longer just a mystery. It was a ghost that haunted everyone. For Anna's parents, every day became a cycle of waiting. At first, they clung to hope. They believed one morning the phone would ring, and an officer would tell them she had been found. But the weeks turned into months, and then into years. Hope began to hurt. Birthdays passed with an empty chair at the table. Holidays came with no laughter from their daughter. Her mother kept hanging Anna's Christmas stocking, even though no gifts ever filled it. The house grew quieter. The photos of Anna stayed on the walls, but they became harder to look at. Every picture was a reminder of what was missing. Her father threw himself into routines. He mowed the lawn, fixed broken things, and went on long drives. But no matter what he did, the silence followed him. At night, her mother would sit by the window, staring at the road. Sometimes she thought she saw headlights coming down the driveway. Her heart would race, only to realize it was just another car passing by. Friends tried to help. They invited the parents out, brought food, or called with prayers. But over time, those visits grew less frequent. People didn't know what to say anymore. The parents' world became smaller. Their conversations grew shorter. Grief filled every corner of their lives. Each anniversary of Anna's disappearance was marked with candles and vigils. Crowds came at first. By the 5th year, only a few neighbors showed up. The parents stood in silence, holding hands, wondering if they were the only ones still waiting. For them, time did not heal. Time only made the wound deeper. Inside the sheriff's office, things changed too. In the early days, Anna's photo hung on the wall. Deputies wore black bands over their badges in her honor. Meetings started with updates on her case. But as years passed, the reminders faded. New deputies joined the force. They were younger, fresh out of training, with no memory of Anna. For them, she was just a name on an old file, a sad story veterans mentioned in hushed tones. The photo on the wall was eventually taken down to make space for new displays. Her case folder was moved from the front of the desk to the back of a cabinet. The department had to keep working. New crimes, new emergencies, new deputies needing guidance. Life inside the station did not stop, even if Anna's family wished it would. Some of the older deputies carried the guilt. They remembered working the search. They remembered the long nights of failure. They knew her family was still suffering, but they also knew the department couldn't stay frozen in the past. Still, the silence left a mark. Any time a deputy didn't answer the radio right away, tension filled the room. The thought of another officer vanishing haunted everyone. To the veterans, Anna's disappearance was a scar. To the new deputies, it was a warning. They were told, "Don't ever let your guard down. If it happened once, it can happen again." But over time, even that warning faded. The case that had once rocked the department became something most tried not to mention. And in doing so, the memory of Anna slipped further away. The sheriff's office had moved on, but for those who had been there from the start, the silence never truly lifted. Life in the town did not stop, but it never went back to normal. Shops still opened, kids still played in the park, families still gathered for Sunday dinners. But the energy was different. There was always something missing, like a piece of the town had been ripped out and never replaced. Neighbors no longer trusted each other the way they once had. Parents who used to let their children walk to school now insisted on driving them, even if it was only a few blocks. Porch lights that once went dark after bedtime now burned all night long. Some people said it was paranoia. Others said it was just common sense. Her disappearance had become more than a mystery. It was now a story parents told to warn their kids. Don't talk to strangers. Don't wander off. Remember what happened here. The cautionary tale hung in the air like smoke. Children grew up hearing her name even if they had never met her. At church gatherings, older members whispered about the case as if it were a curse. Some believed something evil had touched the town, and that's why she was never found. Others believed the evil was closer to home, that someone local had taken her, and that person might still be walking free. As years passed, new families moved into the community. To them, the story was just history, a scary tale like a ghost story told at a campfire. But for those who had lived through it, the wound was real. Every time they passed the old bus stop, every time they drove down the street where she had last been seen, they felt it again. Local schools even began using her story in safety talks. Police officers would stand before classrooms and remind kids to stay alert. They didn't have to say her name. Everyone already knew who they were talking about. The case had become part of the town's identity. It was not just about one missing girl anymore. It was about the fear, the silence, and the scars left behind. A generation grew up in that shadow, never fully free of it. Some people still held out hope, at least in public. They said maybe she had run away and started fresh somewhere else. But most didn't believe that anymore. They just didn't say it out loud. Instead, they lived their lives quietly, carrying the story like a weight. The town was alive, but it was not whole, and everyone knew it. In the sheriff's office, her file sat on a shelf, thick folders stuffed with reports, interviews, and dead ends. Every so often, a detective would pull it out, flip through the pages, and try again. But each attempt ended the same way. A tip that went nowhere, a lead that collapsed, a theory that didn't fit. Some officers believed the case was unsolvable. Others thought the answer was there, buried inside the paperwork, waiting for the right set of eyes. But as the years stretched on, hope thinned. The folders grew older, their edges frayed, the ink fatting. Dust settled across the covers like a blanket. To the department, it became just another cold case. But to her family and to the people who remembered, it was more than a file. It was a life. A story that refused to end. It was a calm summer morning 6 years after the deputy vanished. The case was cold. People had moved on. For most, her name was a memory. But at a quiet lake outside town, a fisherman prepared for an ordinary day. The water was still, reflecting the trees around it. He cast his line, waiting for a bite. Everything felt routine. Then something caught his eye. Just beyond the reeds, something shiny broke the surface. At first he thought it was trash, maybe a can or an old piece of metal. But as the sunlight hit it again, it glinted in a way that made him uneasy. He rowed closer. The object wasn't floating. It was fixed, barely sticking out from under the water. His stomach tightened. He leaned over the side of the boat, staring down. It looked like metal, smooth, curved, unnatural in this quiet place. He touched it with his fishing pole, solid, cold. The fisherman froze. He had been on this lake many times, and nothing like this had ever been here before. He backed his boat away slowly, his mind racing. Could it be a car? The thought chilled him. A car at the bottom of this lake. He knew what that might mean. Hands shaking, he reeled in his line. The fish no longer mattered. He pulled the boat back to shore and hurried to his truck. Within minutes, he was on the phone with police, his voice tight with fear. "There's something in the lake," he said. "Something metal, you need to see this." The sheriff's office didn't take long to respond. After years of whispers, after so many dead ends, they weren't going to ignore a tip like this. Cars didn't just end up in lakes by accident. By the afternoon, deputies had arrived at the scene. They marked off the area and kept people back. The fisherman stood to the side, pale and nervous. He knew what he saw. He just didn't know how big it was going to become. Everyone waited for the dive team. When the divers showed up, the lake grew tense. Their truck pulled up with heavy gear, oxygen tanks, and thick ropes coiled on the ground. Locals gathered at the shore, whispering. Something big was happening. The divers suited up, helmets and masks checked, every strap tight. They knew this water. It was deep, cold, and filled with mud that could swallow a person whole. Visibility was always bad, but they were trained for this. Two men waded in first, their suits dark against the water. Then they slipped beneath the surface, bubbles rising as they disappeared. The crowd fell silent. Below, the world changed. The water was murky, almost black. Every movement stirred clouds of silt. The divers switched on their lights, beams cutting through the darkness like knives. They moved slowly, scanning the bottom, feeling their way along. For a while there was nothing, just mud, rocks, and branches. The divers kept their pace steady, careful not to get tangled. Then one of them saw it. A shape, large, curved, out of place. He swam closer, running his gloved hand across it. Metal, smooth in some spots, jagged in others. He tapped it with his knife and the sound confirmed it. A vehicle. He signaled to his partner. Together they swam around the object, their lights sweeping across it. The outline became clearer, 4 wheels, a roof crushed inward, windows shattered. It wasn't just any vehicle, it was a car. The divers surfaced, pulling off their masks. Everyone on shore leaned forward. "We found something," one said. His voice was calm, but the weight was heavy. Deputies exchanged looks. Cameras started clicking. The sheriff gave orders to secure the site. This wasn't just a lead. This was real. After 6 years of silence, the lake had given up a secret. And now, everyone wanted to know what was inside. The divers went back down, this time with ropes and markers. They circled the car slowly, attaching straps to the frame. The water around it was thick with silt, clouds rising with every touch. Up close, the vehicle looked worse than anyone expected. Rust had eaten through the body. The roof was caved in, the doors warped. The headlights were broken, staring blankly through the murk. One diver ran his light across the windshield. Cracked, spiderweb nearly gone. Inside was dark, impossible to see clearly. He pressed his face close, shining his beam in. Shapes floated in the water. Papers, fabric, things that had been trapped for years. The diver's chest tightened. He pulled back and gave the signal. "It's ready to bring up." On the surface, deputies readied the crane. A thick cable was lowered into the water. The divers guided it, securing it to the frame. Step by step, the line grew taut. Then came the sound. Metal straining, scraping against rocks below. The lake groaned as if it resisted giving up its secret. Slowly, bubbles boiled up to the surface. The crowd on shore held their breath. The fisherman who had first spotted the metal stood silent, arms crossed, his eyes wide. Finally, the car began to rise. Water poured off its roof in streams. Mud and weeds clung to the wheels. The crushed vehicle broke the surface, rust shining in the sun. It looked like something from a nightmare, a tomb pulled from the depths. Deputies rushed forward. Cameras clicked nonstop. The sheriff stared at the wreck, his face pale. It wasn't just a car, it was a grave. And everyone knew whose it might be. The winch groaned as the car rose higher, dripping mud and weeds onto the bank. Deputies kept the crowd back, but people pressed close anyway, their eyes locked on the object breaking the surface. Then it happened. The crushed vehicle cleared the waterline, swinging slightly as the crane pulled it up. The moment sunlight hit its sides, gasps echoed across the shore. Paint chipped, rust-eaten, but still visible beneath it all were the faint markings of a sheriff's patrol car. The star decal, the stripes, the roof light shattered but still there. It wasn't just any car, it was hers. The missing deputy's patrol car. The crowd fell silent. Mothers pulled their children close. Deputies exchanged tense looks. After 6 long years, the biggest question of all had been answered. The car existed, and it had been here the entire time. Reporters scribbled furiously. Cameras zoomed in. The sheriff gave a tight nod, and investigators moved fast, clearing space to lower the wreck onto a tarp. For years, this vehicle had been the ghost at the center of the case, the piece no one could find. And now it lay in front of them, real, solid, impossible to deny. The air grew heavy. Whatever secrets it held were about to be revealed. Once the car was stable, investigators stepped in. They pried open the door, the hinges shrieking from years underwater. A sour smell rushed out, thick with mud and decay. Flashlights cut through the dark interior. What they saw froze them. On the passenger seat sat a leather wallet. Inside, her badge, the same badge she had carried on her last shift. Next to it, her sidearm, rusted but unmistakable. The holster strap still buckled tight. She had never drawn it. The back seat held a uniform jacket, fabric eaten by water but still showing the department patch. On the floorboard were personal items, a notebook, lipstick, a broken watch. Everyday things, preserved in silence for 6 long years. Deputies stepped back, shaken. Each piece was more than evidence. It was a reminder of her last night, frozen in time. People on the shore whispered, some crossing themselves, others just staring. For the family who had been rushed to the scene, the sight was almost unbearable. The car wasn't just a vehicle anymore. It was a time capsule and a grave. Within minutes, the site transformed into chaos. Detectives who had long since moved on were called back. Crime scene tape went up. Evidence bags appeared. This was no longer a cold file. It was a living case again. After 6 years, the missing deputy was no longer just a ghost story. She was real. Her car was real. Her belongings were real. For the sheriff's office, it was both relief and dread. Relief that a lead had finally broken open. Dread at what they might now uncover. The deputy's name, once faded into memory, was suddenly on every radio, every notepad, every whisper along the lakeshore. The case had been reborn, but even as the wreck sat before them, questions piled up. Why hadn't this car been found before? Search teams had dragged lakes, flown helicopters, checked every inch of the county, and yet here it was hidden in plain sight. Had they missed it, or had someone wanted it to stay hidden? Some whispered about mistakes, others whispered about cover-ups. The lake had given up one answer, the car was real, but it had opened a dozen more. And the truth was, no one on that shore knew what they had really uncovered. The patrol car, still dripping from the lake, was hauled into a secure state crime lab. Investigators treated it like a time capsule, knowing every detail mattered. The first step was draining the water. Gallons of murky liquid poured out, carrying silt, weeds, and fragments of rust. Forensic teams carefully collected samples, labeling each one. Nothing could be overlooked. Next, they examined the body of the car. Rust ate through the frame, but certain parts remained intact. The headlights were off. The gearshift was still in drive. The doors were locked. These details painted a chilling picture. Inside, every object was catalogued. Her badge, her sidearm, her personal items. Even the smallest pieces were logged and photographed. For the team, it wasn't just about solving a mystery. It was about telling the truth of what happened that night, and the truth was beginning to take shape. Investigators returned to the lake. They studied the shoreline, searching for marks that time might have erased. Slowly, a possible scenario formed. Tire impressions were faint but visible near a steep embankment. Soil tests suggested the ground had been disturbed years earlier, consistent with a heavy vehicle sliding down. Experts mapped out the angle. If the deputy's car had lost control at that spot, momentum would have carried it straight into the water. The slope was sharp, and at night, nearly invisible. Their theory, sometime late that night she veered off the road. Maybe she was tired, maybe she was distracted. Either way, her car went over the edge. At full weight, with water filling fast, the vehicle sank quickly. Once it dropped below the surface, it would have disappeared from view in seconds. For the first time, investigators had a story that seemed to fit. Even with the crash theory in place, big questions hung in the air. Why hadn't anyone heard the car crash into the lake? Locals nearby said the night had been silent. No screams, no splash, nothing. And then there was the search. 6 years earlier, teams had dragged the same waters. Helicopters had scanned the lake. If the car was here all along, how did they miss it? Some investigators suggested the lake conditions had hidden it: murky water, deep silt, shifting currents. Others weren't so sure. Could the vehicle have been moved, towed in later, hidden deliberately? No evidence proved that theory, but the doubt was impossible to ignore. The discovery answered one question: where the car was, but it sparked new ones that felt almost heavier. For the community, it was both relief and frustration. They had an ending, but not all the answers. The final step was the hardest. Human remains, recovered from inside the car, were sent for analysis. Forensic pathologists handled them with care, knowing the family had waited 6 years for this moment. The autopsy results were clear. There were no signs of a struggle, no broken bones, no evidence of an attack. The cause of death was drowning. The deputy had been alive when her car entered the water. She was trapped, unable to escape as it sank. Personal items found with the remains, her watch, her jewelry, confirmed her identity. For her family, the results were both heartbreaking and final. She hadn't run away. She hadn't been murdered. She had died that night, alone, locked in her patrol car beneath the lake. It was the truth they had wanted, but not the truth they had hoped for. For years, rumors had torn the town apart. Some swore she ran away. Others whispered about corruption, secret affairs, even murder inside the department. Every theory grew louder with time, feeding on silence. But now investigators had hard evidence. The autopsy and crash reconstruction told a different story. There was no sign of struggle, no poison, no staged crime scene. Nothing linked her to a double life. She had not planned to disappear. She had not betrayed her badge. The truth was painfully ordinary. A tired deputy, late at night, driving home after her shift. One wrong turn, one missed curve, and her car plunged into darkness. The weight of the vehicle, the force of the water, the locked doors, all of it left her no chance. It wasn't scandal, it wasn't conspiracy, it was tragedy. For investigators, ruling out the wild rumors brought some relief. But for the family and town, accepting the simplicity of the truth was almost harder. The mystery that had haunted them for 6 years ended not with villains or secrets, but with an accident. Her parents, siblings, and loved ones sat together when officials shared the final results. For 6 years, they had carried two impossible weights: hope and fear. Now both were gone. The truth was here, and it was crushing. There was relief. She hadn't run away, she hadn't chosen to leave them. But that relief mixed with unbearable pain. She had died trapped, alone, only miles from home, while they spent years searching everywhere else. Her mother cried quietly, clutching the badge returned from the wreck. Her father stared at the floor, silent. The family finally had answers, but closure didn't feel like healing. It felt like saying goodbye all over again. The official report closed the case. Accidental drowning. It was neat, clean, final on paper. But outside the report, doubts lingered. How had a full search missed a patrol car in a local lake? How had sonar, divers, and helicopters failed to find it? No one had proof of foul play. Yet the timeline, the silence, and the failures left shadows no report could erase. For her family, it felt bitter. They knew what killed her, but they would never know why it took 6 years to bring her home. In the end, the truth was not enough to feel like justice. 6 years after she vanished, the deputy is finally laid to rest. The town shuts down for the day. Streets are lined with people holding flags, some in silence, others quietly crying. The hearse moves slowly, escorted by dozens of patrol cars with their lights flashing, but no sirens. At the cemetery, uniformed officers stand shoulder to shoulder. When the casket arrives, they raise their hands in salute. The silence is heavy, broken only by the sound of boots on gravel and the soft cries of family members. Her parents, now older and worn down by years of waiting, cling to each other. Siblings and cousins place flowers on the casket. The family finally has a place to grieve, a grave, not just a memory. It is closure but not peace. Inside the sheriff's office, the discovery of the deputy's car forces a reckoning. Old reports are pulled, timelines reviewed, and the gaps are obvious. Search patterns had missed the lake. Early theories wasted time. Assumptions cost years. Behind closed doors, the sheriff admits mistakes, not to the public but to his own team. Some deputies feel shame, others frustration. They had sworn to protect one of their own, yet for 6 years her car sat in the water, unnoticed. The department quietly rolls out new rules. Missing officers will now trigger larger search grids. Lakes and rivers will be scanned with sonar. Vehicles won't be assumed to have just driven away. But inside the halls, the weight of her story lingers. Every deputy knows they failed her once, and they vow it won't happen again. The small Texas town, once split by rumor, now finds unity in loss. Candlelight vigils are held in the courthouse square. Families gather, holding photos of the deputy, remembering her as more than a case. She was their neighbor, their friend, their protector. Church services overflow. Pastors speak of sacrifice and unanswered questions. Children who once heard whispers about the missing lady deputy now see her name engraved on a memorial wall. She is no longer just a mystery. She is remembered as a person who served and who mattered. At the high school gym, a banner hangs, "Gone but never forgotten." For the first time in years, the town feels united. Rumors fade into silence, replaced by candles, prayers, and quiet reflection. Her absence leaves a hole that can never be filled, but her memory becomes a bond. Still, not everyone accepts the official story. The report calls it an accident, but in coffee shops and backyards, whispers grow. How could trained search teams miss a patrol car in a lake for 6 years? Was someone covering for a mistake? Did someone delay telling the truth? Some claim the car was hidden deeper, only dragged closer later. Others believe the deputy stumbled onto something she wasn't supposed to see. Conspiracies form, fueled by silence from officials. The family hears the rumors but says little. For them, the grave is enough, though doubt lingers in their eyes. To this day, the debate hasn't ended. Was it just a tragic crash or something darker? The truth may rest at the bottom of that lake, along with questions no one can fully answer. For her family, closure does not mean healing. Her parents and siblings finally know where she is and what happened, but the answers do little to erase 6 years of waiting. They visit her grave often. Her mother kneels by the stone, brushing away leaves, whispering as though her daughter is still listening. Her father, who once drove the back roads at night searching for her, now stands in silence, his hand resting on the headstone. Her siblings leave small mementos, a bracelet, a childhood photo, a badge pin. Each item carries the weight of years lost. They talk to her as if she never left, telling her about family birthdays, holidays, and the things she missed. It is closure, yes, but it is also pain that never fully lifts. Her story spreads far beyond her small Texas town. Young women entering law enforcement hear about the deputy who vanished, and who was later found after years underwater. Academies teach her name. Recruiters speak of her dedication and courage. For many, she becomes a reminder that the badge is not just a job, it is a calling that can demand everything. Local scholarships are created in her honor. A mural goes up on the side of the sheriff's office, showing her in uniform, smiling, alive again in paint. New cadets touch the wall for luck before starting their shifts. Her sacrifice becomes a symbol. She is remembered not only for how she died, but for why she served. And in this way, she lives on, inspiring the next generation to follow in her footsteps, no matter the risk. In the end, her story lingers as a warning and a mystery. Even those sworn to protect can disappear without a trace. 6 years she lay hidden, her badge resting in the dark water, waiting for someone to find it. The haunting image of her patrol car being pulled from the lake stays in the town's memory. For some, it represents failure, a reminder that the search overlooked what was right in front of them. For others, it represents fate, a tragic accident that no one could stop. The truth is both simple and cruel. Sometimes answers are buried deep, and only time brings them back. Her badge, her car, and her story remain a symbol of how fragile life is, and how mystery can cling to even the bravest among us. She is gone but never forgotten.